Hi, you're watching DNA Today, a multi-award-winning genetics podcast where we explore everything to do with genetics, from CRISPR to rare diseases to new research. We have won the Science and Medicine Podcast Award for many years now. We have hundreds of episodes, and we really hope you enjoy these conversations where we dive into so many genetic concepts. I'm Geana Dyer, a certified genetic counselor, and your host. So we are at the New England Genetics Regional Group's annual conference here in the beautiful holiday decorated Portsmouth. And so we stepped away from the conference so that I could hear from Geana more about her experience as a parent of a kiddo that has a rare disease, and it's called Cockayne Syndrome, and it's your little guy, Ronin. Yeah. First, tell me about Ronin. Like, what does he love? What does he get excited about?
Ronin? Okay, one, he loves birds, loves them. He loves the moon. Every time he sees it, every time it's dark out, he's like, and I'm like, dude, it's cloudy, it's snowy, you can't see it. And he's like, I'm going outside. He doesn't say, I'm going outside.
But you know that that's what's happening and he wants to express. Do you read him the book Goodnight Moon?
Tried.
You've
and
tried.
He just
okay.
takes it from me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's like the thought is there, but the execution's a little tough.
I turn page and page.
Yeah.
Yes, I've tried. He's had his aide from school, even bought it for him.
That's
recently.
So cute because his aide knows he loves the moon. Yeah. And you
Sure,
probably need the
extra.
cardboard books because the flimsy picture books is like that, even like, so he's 5 now.
Yeah.
But, I think anywhere up to maybe like 8 years old, those are helpful because kids just rip the, flimsy books apart.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I was expecting that we could like evolve out of cardboard books sooner than we have, but it's okay. They're more durable, especially with our dog. So
yes. Yeah. Who is Ronin's best friend, we would say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So tell me about the journey, because I was able to sit through your presentation along with his neurologist. Was that her title? Geneticist. Okay. She knew a lot about neuro, so I was impressed.
Yeah.
So before we even start the diagnostic odyssey, I actually want to go back to all the way to conception. Yeah. So you ended up conceiving him through IVF.
Yes.
And it was an audible, like you could hear a pin drop in the audience when you and the geneticist had brought up. So I would say there's over 100 people here, attendees, mostly genetic counselors. And so when you brought up the concept that carrier screening wasn't offered during the IVF process, I was really surprised by that. As someone that works in prenatal and I'm a prenatal genetic counselor and ends up counseling a lot of patients that have gone through IVF. And when I counsel them, I'm like, confirming that you were offered carrier screening. And they're like, yep. And I'm like, did you end up doing it? I have that whole part. And Ronin's 5. So this wasn't a really long time ago. I'm just astounded that you weren't offered it.
Yeah.
And that I should point out, this would have been picked up on standard carrier screening, Cockayne syndrome. It's an autosomal recessive condition.
Yeah, I just assumed that the basic genetic panel that they did covered all of the things, all the terminal, scary, frightening diagnoses. And I just went with that. And that was all they gave me. I didn't know there was anything more until a few months ago when I was talking with Dr. Anderson about it. So that was heartbreaking and a pretty big pill to swallow, knowing that I could have known from the beginning what our risk factors were.
Yeah, I think we hear that from so many people that their kid ends up diagnosed with an autosomal recessive condition that is not an ultra rare or a condition that's not usually in like the first few 100 conditions on a panel.
That's why in the next presentation, that's why I'd ask, so how do you determine which disorders are you?
Yes. The next presentation was about newborn sequencing. And so really getting into like how the UK has made this big promise. They're going to be sequencing all newborns before a certain year. We talked about it on episode last week, 370. I'll link to that in the show notes. So it is like, how are we saying what's included, what's not? And so I thought that was a really good question. I wonder what could be improved with it and just to make it more standardized, because at this point, I would say fertility centers in the United States, I would be shocked if in 2025, now we're going into 2026, if they didn't offer carrier screening to every single couple pursuing IUI or IVF.
Right, because it clearly has to be like, there's got to be something going on between the two people that are trying to merge their genes together.
Yes.
That is inhibiting that from happening instead of just carrying this guilt of just something's wrong with me as a female human. I can't reproduce. And my husband feeling the same way. Maybe it wasn't that.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And which could be weird to some people, but for me, it definitely would have alleviated some of the guilt and stress and sorrow that we were experiencing during that time and having to go through the whole process.
Right.
Yeah.
Having different choices available to you at the time, because had you been diagnosed or not diagnosed yourself, Ronin, or just known that you and your partner were both a carrier of the same condition, then you would have had an option to then do PGTM, so pre-implantation genetic testing for monogenic conditions like Cockayne syndrome, but also others. I think you had come up as a carrier for a couple others
too. Yeah.
So were you and your partner both the carrier of Tay-Sachs that you retroactively found out?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So,
and that's another really serious condition that is, in terms of a timeline, much faster compared to Cockayne syndrome.
Yeah. Which also, I was just like kind of floored by it once I learned what Cockayne syndrome is. Because when back in like biology class in like 8th grade, you know about Tay-Sachs and like how rapid aging happens. And I'm like, oh my God, that is what happened. That's what's going to happen to my son. Like, like how?
Yeah.
So sad.
Right.
And
So
also on top of that, because we had 4 eggs.
Okay.
Well, we had 5, 1 arrested. And then
eggs or embryos? Yeah.
yes,
embryos.
5 embryos, my bad. 1 arrested. And then the other 4, we had 3 little guys like hanging out, just like waiting in the freezer.
Yep.
To, you know, come meet Ronin. And I mean, had we gotten all of that, the testing before, we could have tested all of the eggs.
Right. And ideally, you want to test everything together because you don't want to freeze embryos, thaw them out, freeze them again. That's not ideal for those that want to go down that path and learn something along the way that they've already done embryo screening. So we've mentioned Cockayne syndrome. I think it might be helpful to hear from you of like, what is this condition? How does it affect people, including Ronin? Because I don't know if he has all of the symptoms, because sometimes with conditions there's lots of symptoms and some kids have some compared to others, or the severity is different. So we see spectrum disorders everywhere. So tell us a little more about the condition for those that maybe have heard the name of it like I had, but didn't really know a lot about it after the name.
All right. Because you reminded me of continuums. Okay. So Cockayne syndrome itself, it impacts the ERCC6 or ERCC gene, right? And they both are part of the DNA repair cycle, if you will. And so essentially when cells are damaged in the body, in Ronin's body, they are not repaired. But like my favorite way of saying it is our bodies have a very efficient recycling and waste management system, right? So we reduce, reuse, and we recycle. So part of this DNA repair cycle, again, very popular word today, is that our bodies recognize these damaged cells, and then they'll just take out the pieces and be like, "Ooh, we'll use this one from over here, and this one over here, and this one. Oh, it's going
in our bodies. It's pretty efficient. And people that don't have conditions,
on the kidney. Goodbye, you're trash. You know." And Ronin does not have that. So instead, these cells are breaking, and then there's free radicals swimming about everywhere, causing increased inflammation and rapid aging. So another interesting thing about CS, it's all very interesting, is that there are 3 types. I've been told that there are 4 types now. The fourth being it's like someone will live their entire life until like even the 40s, 50s, and then they realize they've got rheumatoid arthritis and they've got different autoimmune disorders, and bam, they have Cockayne syndrome. But that is like a very, very, very rare amount.
And the most mild of the 4-ish types that we know about.
Yes. A lot of the literature is just type 1, type 2, and type 3. So type 1 being moderate. This was the first, the numbers don't go along they are not chronological. It doesn't make any sense.
It usually doesn't in genetics. We don't make it easy, do we?
Okay. See, and I'm just learning about 1. So you're like, yes, I got it. This is how it all works. So type 1 was really the first one that was ever identified. And then type 2 is the most severe. So children with this are born with cataracts. They're much smaller, and they already have deficiencies at birth. And their life expectancy is 5 years. So type 3 is the mild version. And these children get symptoms in their later childhood, and their life expectancy is and I guess I should add, because I never said any of this about type 1.
Mm.
Type 1 not only being the first to be discovered, but children, onset of symptoms is greater than 2 years old. And then they start to lose all of their
At least obvious symptoms, I'm thinking, because they might
obvious.
have like failure to thrive and global developmental delay, but nothing that is characteristic of Cockayne syndrome.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yes. And that I love that you said that, because that's exactly why one of the CS specialists had told us that Ronin, he said, no, this child definitely has type 1
Mhm.
based on, like, nobody could really identify any symptoms until he was 2.
Have cataracts very early.
It's,
Okay.
and over time, as I've been meeting and seeing more families, their children that are born type 2, it's clear at birth. They have their facial features are very specific, and they're they surprisingly look a little more chubby than I thought they would be, because they just don't get much bigger than 18 to 20 inches long. They're just petite little babes for their whole lives.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, it's like over time, they will lose their vision, their sight, their hearing, their ability to walk, their ability to speak. Dementia is very common once they hit 10 years of age. There's a recent research article that came out last year about that.
We'll link to that in the show notes if people want to read it. Yep.
Awesome. Yeah. A lot of the kids need tubes, as in G tubes, to feed, because it's like so difficult to feed them. They don't want to eat, and Dr. Anderson was talking about that.
Yeah. Your fellow presenter.
Yes.
Yeah.
So something dietary. So I'd fired my dietitian.
So a lot of parents of kids with Cockayne syndrome do, because there's so much with a lot of disorders where you can't follow a normal growth chart, normal diet. You really have to follow what is for that disorder. I think about with skeletal disorders, you're not looking at a typical growth chart. Look at one for, let's say, achondroplasia, because then you see, oh, they're normal on that chart. And you're like, great. And that seemed to be very similar for Cockayne syndrome.
Yes. Yeah. Because there's a growth chart now that came out a couple of years ago, too, specifically for Cockayne syndrome. Ronin's at like 98th percentile. He is
on that.
Right.
But if you look at a normal growth chart, he would be low percentile.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's so important for geneticists know this, but for the pediatricians and the other providers, because Ronin has a lot of providers, to all know this and follow this so that his care is tailored in that way and it can be more accurate. And part of that of like, maybe it sounds like the dietitian was like, oh, well, you're not feeding him enough, or whatever those terms were, to kind of put parent guilt on you. And it's like, actually, I'm trying my best. And the dietitians and everybody need to follow, well, what works for Cockayne syndrome specifically?
Right. Yeah, I have another analogy, and it's like this. There's a whole bunch of different types of breeds of dogs, right?
Yes.
They're all dogs. But
hundreds, probably.
You don't feed a Great Dane the same amount of food as a Chihuahua, right?
No, that would be a big problem.
Ronin would be a giant, like,
He'd probably have other health issues if you fed him the way that you would a 5-year-old that didn't have Cockayne syndrome.
Also, it doesn't matter anyway, because we wouldn't be able to, because
he wouldn't eat all that anyway.
And the puking and all the things, right? Like
he would just have more of that if you kept feeding him too much.
Yeah.
Just like when you overfeed a newborn, it's like they're going to just spit it up.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So having that support from the nutritionist that we have now, or dietitian that we have now, has been incredibly helpful, because the change in him from just the tube feed, like synthetic tube feed, to whole foods, it was within 2 days. He was less grumpy. He was smiling and giggling. He was playing more, and he was able to regulate himself emotionally so much better, just from going from synthetic to blended whole foods, which is a whole other animal, girl.
Right.
So many things.
I mean, there's just so much that is different when you have a kid that has certain special needs like Ronin. You can't just say, okay, we're going to take these chicken nuggets out of the freezer and throw them in the air fryer. Like, it involves more steps. And that seems to be with the foundation a big focus of helping with some of the supplies that are needed. Because you're talking about a G-tube. Very different when my grandfather was towards the end of his life, like he had a G-tube. So I had a little sense of like what is involved in that. And very different, I'm sure, with a kid that is, just kind of like antsy all over the place. Like, do you have to worry about, them infecting it more than you would an elderly person? And just, I mean, so many different aspects of supplies that you need, of just different creams and skin products, because we haven't even talked about that yet, of like his skin is affected and you have to be
Mhm.
so careful in the sun, which makes sense to me coming back at that DNA repair concept of like, if his skin is not able to repair itself the ways that ours does when we're out in the sun, like, okay, that makes sense to me. And we see that with other DNA repair conditions.
Yeah.
But anyway, like with the foundation that you're helping to run, it's exciting to hear that you've been able to connect with, oh, I'm trying to remember the number now, over 60?
It's 45. It's
45. Okay, I went a little over. You know what? Maybe that's just putting it into the universe that you'll get to 60 soon. Maybe that was my way of saying that.
I'm hoping so.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm hoping so too. We have 45 kiddos. I keep looking back here because I have.
Yeah, for people not watching the video, we're going to include a picture of this lovely poster that's behind us.
Mhm.
There are 45, as I just learned. Are most of them kids? Like / some young adults?
Yes, a lot of them. The majority, I think, are under 6.
Okay.
So,
And it's throughout the U.S. into Canada.
yeah. And it's not only the Cockayne syndrome kiddos. We have kids with trichothiodystrophy too, who we send care packages to. And we're hoping someday to be able to get them a care manual that we have, similar to Cockayne syndrome.
So with this other condition, what is the closeness, the relationship with Cockayne syndrome? Is it one of the same genes is mutual?
Both of them are ERCC disorders, so they're both DNA repair disorders. And a lot of the symptoms overlap. There's a natural history study right now. They are studying children with Cockayne syndrome and also kids with trichothiodystrophy because there's so much overlap between the two of them. And that's why we help them. And they also, I think that there are less children with TTD. It's 1 in every 1 million births.
So there has to be less.
Yeah.
Just
so
in general.
Yes, exactly. And it's 2.5 children, 0.5 in every 1 million births for CS. So it's really like not that much different, but
it's in similar ballparks. But it's like,
is it rare?
how rare?
Ultra rare.
And then nano rare. Like there's so many different levels to the rareness.
It's like, anyway, there's like 100 kids with this thing.
Yeah.
And we want to help them.
Yeah.
And just because like different, ERCC protein doesn't mean like, oh, we're just.
You're in the same community. You have a lot of the same challenges and struggles and resources that you need.
In fact, we actually have the family page is Cockayne syndrome and trichothiodystrophy families page. So like we're like
intertwined in that way.
Yeah. With trichothiodystrophy. So there's a specific hair test that they measure sulfur, and I think it's some sort of sulfur deficiency. They have very, very fine, thin hair. It's falling out all the time, which is pretty sad. And their skin is very, very dry. It's super sensitive. So parents are usually asking for leave-in conditioner, like the unscented various lotions that if you could get them donated from certain people, I'd mention that product.
Yeah.
But they all like specific for that type of skin and what they can tolerate. So so because these impact multi-system here, right?
Yeah.
Like there's obviously a plethora of things that we need as parents to take care of the kids. Thermal dysregulation, that's one of the things that is huge, especially I guess I could say us in the upstates and New England and stuff that, in the cold, it's cold and we need to get like heated blankets. And
they have a very tiny window of like, this is where they need the temperature to be. Too hot is not good. Too cold is not too good either.
Exactly. And so our current president of Cockayne Syndrome Foundation, she says, if you are sweating, they are overheating. If you are shivering, they are hypothermic.
Really cold.
Yeah. So it's just the amount of, just got to be very cautious with it. So making sure that they have the proper boots and hats and attire for any kind of weather.
Heat a blanket at home when you guys are watching a movie or something.
Yeah. Like typical stuff that you don't usually have to buy for.
Right. Things that you wouldn't necessarily think of as medical equipment and supplies, but like it is because they need that medically.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So Geana, you mentioned earlier this 50-page resource for parents, healthcare providers, all about Cockayne syndrome. What is it called? Because we'll link to it in the show notes. And like, how are people using this? What's the type of information they can get from it?
Yeah, so it's called Cockayne Syndrome, a manual for caregivers. And there's also one that's just a manual for healthcare providers.
Okay.
So you have one that it's really nice because the one for caregivers is geared toward us and in a language we can understand and helps us properly advocate for our children. And then there's the healthcare manual, which is more in a language that the medical field understands.
Which you actually, I should have said earlier, you're actually in both. So you've had many careers over your life, very impressively. You're a veteran, you worked Border Patrol at one point, and most recently you've been a nurse, and you're back working in the ED, right?
Yes,
Emergency department
yes,
room.
yes.
So you also tap into that side of your brain quite a bit, I imagine, of just also being a healthcare provider. So, so yeah, you can kind of read through both of them and understand both of them.
Yeah, exactly. Dr. Anderson, I mentioned it in our presentation earlier, and it is chapter by chapter of each system in the body and what docs need to be testing for, monitoring, just kind of keeping your eyes out for with kids that have Cockayne syndrome. It makes me think of Beetlejuice, like the original Beetlejuice, and they're like, "Did you bring the handbook?" Every time I go to the doctor's office,
you're like thinking that, yeah.
Did I bring the handbook? Did you read the handbook?
Right, like it's so important.
Yes, it's mega important. And how amazing would it be if we had 7,000 of those, like each different
for all
disorder?
the rare diseases? And I think now we're up to like 10,000 rare diseases. I mean, it just keeps growing because we keep discovering more. And yeah, I wish every condition had a personalized, and 50 pages, that sounds like a lot. But if you think about it, it's like, well, if you're going in to see this doctor, they probably only need to read those pages. So the way that you've described it being split up, and there are a lot of providers to see. It is not simply your geneticist that you see and then you're like, okay, great, that was our yearly checkup. I think you had mentioned that there's like 10 providers that Ronin sees most of them every 6 months.
Yes.
So that's like, you'll see them in, let's say, January, you're back in June or July or something. So that's a lot of appointments. And it's not like you're having them back to back all in one day. That's too much of a dream. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like 2 appointments in a day. I mean, we have to drive over to Burlington, so that's take the ferry. So it's like an hour, 15 minutes to get there and back, right? And then you have the appointments
and the wait time and everything. And then keeping Ronin like, comfortable and like somewhat engaged with you.
Yes, and that's another hard thing too, because it's like, we keep going and going and going to the doctor, and every time we go, if he has a bad experience, then you have to like unkink that, for a little while, or like we'll have appointments the next week, and I'm like, we need to reschedule because this poor boy is not ready to see you guys yet. So, I guess that's a nice thing about being back in the nursing field, because I come home and I have my stethoscope around my neck, and
you can check some boxes yourself.
Buddy, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, they're there to care for you and take care of you.
Normalize
like
it.
Does.
Yeah.
So.
And one of his favorite things to do is play with your hair, is what I'm hearing.
Yes.
So I'm sure you can kind of coordinate that with like, you get to play with mommy's hair, and I'm going to listen to your heart with the stethoscope.
Yes.
Different ways that we can expose kids to aspects in the medical field. And I'll have to find the kit for it. There's a Lego set that is an MRI machine. And so kids will be given it, and they'll build the MRI machine, and then they're like, this is cool. They put the little Lego man woman in, and then they're like, do you want to get to do that? And they're like, yeah. And then it's a life-size Lego version for them and their experience. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just a big fan of Lego. If they want to sponsor us or Cockayne Syndrome, I think you guys would take them, right?
We would love that. Yes.
But, and Legos is for everybody. Like, I still love Legos. But, being able to do that is so helpful with kids, just in different ways that they grip onto.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's so many other challenges and struggles, just parenthood in general, but then you're adding on aspects of Cockayne syndrome. Is there others that you wanted to mention that either yourself or other parents experience and express that you want healthcare providers to be aware of just, a little bit of the insight into like the day-to-day, because providers only see them during that appointment time?
It's tough, because like all kids are different. But one of the most recent things, and the first thing was coming to my mind, is the last time we went to the doctor's office. We went in for an EEG, and it was just really tough because he's coming in as he appears to be they know he's 5, but his behavior is not 5. He's vocalizing, stimming, and folks just think autism. And it's like, that's not really it. And just to have more of an open mind and more patience and more willing to just ask us what his limitations are, because I know it's hard too, because I am a nurse and I see kiddos come in and I'm gauging them immediately. Like, what is the emotional, cognitive intelligence of this
How
child?
can I speak to them at a level that they're going to like follow along and feel like I'm not talking down to them, right? Like, we're always doing that with kids.
Yes. And that's something that's like important to me, I guess, outside of a really good one though is on top of all of this is that mama knows, dad knows.
Yes.
And that's like the hardest thing. Sometimes when you're trying to advocate for your child, when you bring them into the doctor's office, all of our doctors know us now. It's just like,
at this
hey,
point, they're like,
come.
oh, here's Ronin.
Give us the latest vitals.
Or let's say you're somewhere that is not close to home and suddenly you're going into an ED that you don't work at. And then it's like you're explaining things. And that's something that I hear from so many parents and caregivers that that take out your nurse brain for a moment. You as a parent know this condition better than anyone in the healthcare field, including those that are studying it. Because you're a parent that is going to be on PubMed. That's the latest paper. It just came out. I've got Google alerts on for this and that. And I get so frustrated on your behalf. People are like, oh, well, having like an expert on the show versus a patient or parent advocate. I'm like, excuse me, that's the same thing. You can be a professional expert, like if I'm talking to you as a nurse, or you could be a lived expert in terms of living the experience. And so that's certainly a soapbox that is good to get on.
Yeah. So, I mean, even it's been years since NICS has put out, and I don't know how they say this, but so the National Initiative for Cockayne Syndrome, they were able to get Flagyl like labeled. And you probably know the professional terms for this.
I may not. You might know
labeled as like, hey, don't give this to kids with Cockayne syndrome.
I'm going to look at is this the one thing that Dr. Anderson said that it was like, if you take one thing away from this talk, are you talking about avoiding
metronidazole.
Say it again.
Metronidazole.
Metronidazole. So if anyone remembers anything that's a healthcare provider from this, if someone has Cockayne syndrome, we are not prescribing that.
Right. Because it is immediate like liver failure, death. And another thing is, so fluids, infusions, if a child needs to be fluid resuscitated and they have Cockayne syndrome, the dose needs to be half the rate that you would typically give to a child of their age.
Half is a lot of a decrease there. You're not talking about like 10% less.
And even like just a year or so ago, I've already like parents are still saying that it's still happening to their children. Like I've had a mom send me a picture of her child fluid overloaded versus not. And this is like a mom this is a child that was older, like the child was greater than 10 years of age. So all of the providers that they've been around in that hospital should have known and they should have listened and respected mom. They did that. And then you go down that rabbit hole, right? You're fluid overloaded. Now you got to intubate the child and and if you don't know anything about CS, a Cockayne syndrome child has a smaller airway and
that's scary with intubation.
Doing emergent and it's like, so it's just a whole.
You don't want to start going down that. Yeah.
And like if that provider would have just listened, right? None of that would have happened. So it's just listening to parents, reading the documents that they bring. If they're if they're bringing you homework, you know that they know what they're doing.
Well, yeah, of patients that I see that are usually pregnant. So it's very different in the sense of like, they're not coming to me with like already having issues necessarily, different medical indications that we need to talk about. But if they do bring something, I'm like, okay, there's a reason they're bringing it. And it also gives me a little sense of like, is this an organized patient? Is this someone that's probably already done a lot of research so that I can kind of help gauge, is like you were saying. One thing that I thought was interesting that so we had met over dinner last night at the conference. And so, we were just, talking about this and you're like, oh, it's a DNA repair condition. And so the first thing I thought about is like, oh, there must be a very high chance and risk for cancer development. And then I didn't end up actually asking you that. But then during the presentation, one of you mentioned that there's no cases of cancer in any kids or young adults that have Cockayne syndrome. I can't even process how that is true.
Well, the way that we think, I say we and Katie, we both kind of like figured it out, we think.
Yeah, like the thought process of like why that's true.
All right. So if like a cancer cell is a cell that's recreated or reproduced by your body that has something wrong with it.
Right. It's going rogue in some way.
And we just have to stop right at it's being reproduced. Or like if we say, oh, well, maybe not that so much. I don't see you buying that one very much.
No, I'm with you. I have to keep going with the thought process.
Like, there is a cancer, say your body creates a cancerous cell. Well, is it going to do the same thing as it does with the other cells? Like it's just going to, when that cancer cell breaks, I don't know enough about cancer.
Or it's a lot of cancer will, it starts as a couple cells and then just kind of grows very rapidly compared to our healthy cells. So I guess that's part of it
Yeah, 'cause
too,
it
that it's
can't
not
grow.
repairing itself and then keep growing. So
Yeah.
it just kind of ends up, that cell line just kind of dies out.
Yeah.
It doesn't keep growing and proliferating.
Yes.
Yeah.
You answered the question.
I guess so. I have been thinking about it in the hours since you presented. But yeah, that's just like at a first glance, I
Isn't
was
it
just surprised.
so interesting?
Because you think about XP,
Yes,
yes,
that's exactly
okay,
what I
is that
was
the
gonna say.
condition?
Which is also an ERCC disorder.
Because that's what I think of, because I had learned that I come from a cytogenetics background. And so we learned about that because it's also like there's a certain way to look at it cytogenetically and diagnose. And so I was thinking about that in kids that I'll link to the documentary, and there's a movie with Bella Thorne or something about XP. And they
I didn't
can't.
know that.
Yeah, I think it came out like 2018, 2019, maybe somewhere around there. I think it was before I was in grad school.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so people can't really be exposed to sun rays because
Right.
that will, start cancer cells for them. So those kids are really protected. Whereas compared to Ronin, his skin will get irritated, but you're not worried about cancer with Ronin.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was just surprising for me to learn.
And then the intensity of the burn, it varies from kid to kid.
Right.
So like, luckily for us, Ronin doesn't burn that bad. Like,
Or pinky
it's
rather
more
than like a
pinky,
red burn.
although the child's got sunblock on all the time.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. But before you knew and had the diagnosis, like if you were stepping outside to maybe go down to your mailbox and back, that probably would only be a few minutes, but he might
Get
look a
pink
little
already.
pink. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, he must just be kind of, was breathing harder, whatever it
Yeah,
was.
maybe
Like
it's
you
hot.
write it off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But really, it was a little baby sunburn from
Right.
being outside for 5 minutes. Seattle,
I
which
was
is
going to
just
say you lived
so
in Washington.
confusing.
I was going to tell you where you lived, but I was like, no, I think she'll get there.
Yeah, let me think about it.
I'm like, well, you had mentioned it, but
It was a very long time ago.
right.
My goodness.
Well, anything else, Geana, that you want people to know that are either other rare disease parents, caregivers that are listening, or healthcare providers? Some people are both, like yourself, for them to like take away from. Obviously, we're going to link to the Cockayne Foundation in the show notes and all of that, as well as some papers of what we've been talking about.
Thank you.
Anything else to end with?
For families and caregivers, like, you're not alone. All of us that are in this nonprofit organization industry, it's hard work, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
And we just keep going. Just keep going. You're not alone.
But yeah, I think that's so important. And so much of what I've heard from other parents, and including you in your presentation, of like that first time meeting another child with your child's condition and that recognition, and then being able to talk to their parent or caregiver about your specific challenges that you have, and knowing that there's other people out there experiencing it. We hear that with so many different aspects, right? That's the reason why AA does so well, of Alcoholics Anonymous, of people saying, oh, these are my people. They have the same struggles as me, and that's what they've gone through. And so there's so many different conditions, life experiences, where connecting with others is just so important and kind of can be one of the silver linings.
Inch stones instead of milestones,
Yes. Inch stones, for people that didn't catch that, because it took me 2 times last night to be like, what are you saying? Inch stones.
Milestones.
Yeah.
We celebrate every
little thing that is a little like, inch in the like development of something. And you're like, wait a minute, was that eye contact? Or was that like a little laugh after a joke that was really well timed? Whatever it is.
Or an attempt to hop. And that is just the cutest thing.
I mean, that sounds so cute. I think I am going to have to now watch some more videos of Ronin. So hopefully everybody's enjoyed this episode.
Oh, yeah.
On
TikTok.
On TikTok. Oh, so other people can watch too. That's wonderful. Awesome. So we'll include that as well.
Awesome.
Well, Geana, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's been awesome.
Thanks for watching DNA Today. To access all of our episodes, head over to dnatoday.com. We also have a lot of bonus content on there that you can enjoy. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, guest pitches, you name it, send them in to info@dnatoday.com. We'd also really appreciate if you could take a moment to rate and review the podcast on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to the show. It really helps more nerds like yourself find the show. Also, if you like giveaways and other ways to connect with us, I recommend following us on social. We're at DNA Today Podcast. We also have a Patreon if you want to be the most level involved in the show. That's also at DNA Today Podcast. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Join us next time to learn and discover new advances in the world of genetics.